Hello, I'm Sanj and welcome to the Future of Wellbeing, a meaningful conversation hosted by myself with very special individuals who genuinely and deeply care about others living their best lives. Get ready, get excited, and most importantly, enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome everybody to an episode of the Future of Wellbeing, and it's an absolute pleasure today to have my very special friend, a dear friend, Pouli in the house. So Pouli, absolute pleasure to have you. Pouli, I'm going to have to give a shout out to our little, obviously got a copy with me, How to Be a Wellbeing. You see, my name is your Dr. Andy. Hey!
Both sides of the Atlantic.
Fantastic. So Pouli's a very dear person to me, very, very dear human, and our bond is very special. But for the benefit of those watching and listening right now who don't know who Pouli is, please, Pouli, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, folks. Jim Pouliopoulos. Everyone calls me Pouli. I am a recovering engineer. I'm a lecturer at a business university in the United States, and I am a well-being and happiness expert who came to all of that late in life, but have focused a lot of my attention around those topic areas, and that's how I ended up writing, co-authoring a book with my friend Sanj.
Yeah. No, it's amazing, Pouli. It's amazing. One of the things I love most about Pouli is that I just feel like we're really good friends. I feel like we can talk about anything, we talk about everything, and it's just a real sense of ultimately it's all all the different life experiences that we've got has just brought us to a point where we seriously care about the work that we do and how other people feel about themselves. So if our book helps people to feel better about themselves or to think differently about their own lives, then that's the dream.
Yeah, that is the best. The best feeling is when someone sends me an unsolicited note about the book and says, I just read your book, or I just gave it to a friend and it really helped them. I had a really nice note from an old friend, a dear friend of mine who I hadn't really talked to in a number of years, who said, hey, I bought your book. It's fantastic. I love it. I just handed it to my daughter who's in a little bit of flux in terms of what she wants to do with her career. And she read through it, read the chapters, especially on career choice, she said, and it really opened her eyes to making the decision a lot easier than it was. And I thought, that's it. That's the goal. That's the dream right there.
Yeah, exactly. What more?
What can you want, right? Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And again, because the book is, How to Be a Wellbeing, inspired the name of this video series, The Future of Wellbeing. What I'd love to know, Pouli, and really dive deeper into you is what does wellbeing mean to you?
Yeah.
And when did you start to prioritize your wellbeing?
Yeah. So for me, and I talk about this in the book a little bit, I mean, I went through some, mental health challenges in 2008 or so. I think I suffered from a bit of what I call situational depression, and that's really when I started to prioritize my own personal mission in life over what I was doing for everyone else. And I think, and it's funny because I know I've talked about this a lot, as you said, in other forums, but I think this is the first time that I have a different way of describing it. So I'm sharing it with you, Sanj, and your audience.
This is exclusive.
It's an exclusive for you.
We need to get a banner saying exclusive.
Yeah, put it up. Breaking news, right? I think what I realized recently was I was spending most of my time trying to make everyone around me happier at my expense. So in other words, I think I was trying to be the person that everyone expected me to be and assumed that I was going to be, whether it was that I was an engineer, right? Growing up, everyone thought I should be an engineer. So I was trying to make people happy by doing those things for them. I was suppressing some of my own goals in my career. I was suppressing some of my own interests because it didn't resonate with the people around me. And that ended up causing me great anxiety and grief and frankly, depression. So now I find that my goal is still to make people happier, but to do it by helping them figure out how to make themselves happy, as opposed to changing myself to make them happy. So in a nutshell, my mission has always been the same. I think I realized that my purpose in life has always been the same, which is to make people happier. It's just that I'm doing it in a way that doesn't drain me of my happiness.
Yeah, wow.
A different way of looking at it. So that's my that was my epiphany. And honestly, it only came to me recently after reading something about purpose that I was reading, and I thought, my purpose really hasn't changed throughout my life. It's just how I'm delivering on it is different now.
Wow, that's quite philosophical, isn't it? Because for some reason, Pouli, when you say stuff like that, I feel like I've read before, I've heard before stories about people who feel like in different career paths, different opportunities, different relationships, they always felt the same. They always felt like they had this higher calling or a contribution to make to society or want to make to society. So they were finding different vices for that, for that mission. Right. Whereas, you're explaining that and you've come full circle.
Yeah.
And now you're at a place where you can do that in a healthy way.
Right.
Without draining yourself.
That's a great way of putting it. Doing it in a healthy way, because it wasn't healthy what I was doing before. And I think a lot of people do that. They suppress their own internal mission, if you will, or they just don't understand how to deliver it in such a way that they win while the other person wins.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that happens is, the Harry Potter series is such a popular series, and I think the reason it's so popular is the following. Everybody wants Hagrid to walk through the front door and tell them that they're a wizard. Everyone wants someone else to tell them what their gift is and what's special about them. And the problem is, most people don't have someone doing that in their lives, right? Our secret powers are never revealed by someone else. You got to figure it out for yourself. And that's why those types of movies are popular, because everyone feels there's something special inside of them that they haven't figured out what it is and no one has revealed to them. And I think part of this is really genuinely looking over your life and saying, what is my superpower? What are the things that I do well, and going with it, being okay, going with it, even if it runs against what people expect you to be.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then how would you define well-being? How would you define what does well-being mean?
So I think well-being for me is, how do you reduce the friction between who you are and what the rest of the world wants you to be? So, there's this old quote that really carried me through a lot of my toughest times, and it's a biblical quote, but I think it stands for quite a bit. It's basically, acquire the sense of peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved. In other words, once you have arrived at who you are genuinely, everyone around you is better. But when you're fighting to be who you are internally, everyone around you is not better. Everyone actually is worse off. It's the ripple effect, can either be a positive or a negative thing. And when you are comfortable in your own skin, that's well-being to me. When you're comfortable in who you are, doing what you do well, but also enjoy doing well, I think that's well-being. And
love that.
And I think too many people tie that together with wealth and fame and power. Like, I need all those things to be myself. No, you don't need any of those things to be yourself.
That's really interesting. I think that could be the first time that I've heard it said as simply as that, Pouli, in terms of well-being is just being authentic with the real you. So, being a well-being can come in many shapes or forms, but when you're the real you, that's when you've almost the epitome of well-being, if we were to say, is when you've become the real you.
Yeah. So it's almost like you're transform. I'm a big believer in energy. Everything is energy, right? And it's almost as if the closer you get to being who you truly are, the greater your sort of internal energy is, and that broadcasts out to the rest of the world. And you affect the people around you. I find that I'm a better husband, father, friend, teacher when I'm doing things that I know I'm doing well. And I'm awful at those jobs when I'm fighting against who I am inside.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my...
No, I love it. I love it. And you mentioned there about, many roles in your life, but I want to pick up on the teaching element, because this leads me on to my, my second question, which is, how has COVID impacted the way that you work? And I know, huge impact for you as well. And then, so part one is that. Part two, how do you see the future of what you do in terms of teaching or speaking or communicating online? Maybe not online, but how do you see that in the when the dust settles?
Yeah.
However it settles. So two-part question. How has it impacted you, and how do you see it going forward?
So I think the way it's impacted me positively and negatively this past year. Positively, well, let's go negative. We'll go with negative first. Negatively, I'm a people person, as you are. I miss seeing people, right? I miss being around people physically. I mean, the Zoom thing is fine, but it's not being around people. It's that whole idea of the energy. So I miss that, and that has, I think that's draining a lot of people. And you know, if you spend too much time in that, as we all have, I think you end up in, you know, in a pretty difficult state at times. So that's the negative side. The positive side is the, you know, doing things via web conference has opened the world to me. So I've spoken to groups that are all, literally all over the world: Australia, Singapore, the UK, you know, South America. I mean, people have been on my workshops that have been from all over the world, where that really wasn't the norm before all of this. So that's good. I mean, that's a positive thing, right? The other positive thing is that in terms of what is the future, you know, as I teach, for example, you know, it allows me some flexibility in the way I deliver that teaching, right? So if for example, I'm traveling to go speak at a conference, then I can still teach my courses when I need to via video conference. So it allows you not to miss out on some things. And also, I think going forward, some percentage of work and some percentage of public speaking and conferences are going to be virtual. And so being able to do that is a bonus, because you don't have to physically be everywhere all the time.
You'll just be picking and choosing where you want to go.
Yeah, right. I wish we could get to that point, but yes, yeah, yes. I mean, if you want to spend time in Dubai, then maybe we just do it via video conference, or maybe you and I go there together and do a conference.
That would be the dream. You pick me up on the way.
That'd be even more fun. Yeah.
But it's interesting, though, Peter. It's interesting because for me, I always wonder about, well, I spend a lot of time now wondering about the future of speaking, the future of conferences, the future of, you know, university especially, because again, with school, it's completely different. School is completely different. School, you know, the younger the child, the more physically present or the community needs to be in terms of classmates or teaching staff and just role models. But when you come to university and when you come to, you know, adults, it's completely different. It's completely different. The desire to be in person is completely different. I remember at university that people used to only go to lectures, one, to pick up the handouts, because otherwise you'd have to print them off yourself and pay.
Right.
Secondly, because they would not be placed on the recording place. We had lecture capture, but they would not be on lecture capture for, I think, maybe a few days after the lecture itself.
Yeah.
So the incentive to go was, one, to pick up the notes, or two, you wouldn't be able to access it otherwise for a while.
Right.
Whereas now, if you can watch it live stream, or you can, you know, virtually attend, a lot of university students aged 18 to 22 would not turn up in person for a 9 a.m. lecture.
Sanj, it's so true, right? So obviously I work in the higher ed industry. So I talk to colleagues at my school, at other schools. And as much as parents and students complained that we were doing all this via video conferencing, so we put a big emphasis on doing it in a hybrid format, giving students an option: come to class, do it via a web conference. In the beginning of the semester, first few weeks, students are showing up. By the middle of the semester, late in the semester, students are not showing up in person anymore. A lot of them opt to just do the video conference. So my forecast for what's going to happen in the higher ed industry for universities going forward is the following. People are going to question the value of going to a university just for the education, because we've proved that we can deliver the education via web conference. I don't think it's as good, but I think it's good enough. And so therefore, what is the value of physically being on campus? For me, the value of being on campus, and when I look back at my own college career, the value of being on campus was I learned how to communicate. I learned how to network. I made lifelong friends that I'm still close with today. And I think you lose that if you're not physically together. And I think this past year, work and school, we've lost that sense of ad hoc interactions, random interactions with people to create relationships. That's I think the biggest detriment to what we've gone through. And I think going forward, that's the thing that you have to place value on. Doing the work and learning and all that, you can do that in a hybrid format, but you can't replicate the relationship building and the networking, which is so critical.
It's impossible. You know, I think about my best friends at university, Luke and Ollie. We bonded because we were in the same maths class, and it was like, hey, how's it going, kind of thing. Whereas you wouldn't on Zoom out of 300 people just
No,
message that person and say, hey, how's
that's
it going? You wouldn't do it. You
right.
just wouldn't do it.
I've talked to business leaders, presidents and founders of companies, and we've talked a lot about the new normal, right? We're literally asking people to recreate the workplace for the third time in 18 months. We had BC, we had before COVID, right? We had COVID, and we were working differently in both those times.
Yeah,
now
true.
we're going back to work, but in a different way. We're recreating the workplace in a whole different way. And one of the main things that they worry about is what you just said. How do I ensure that those random rapport building, ad hoc interactions continue in a hybrid world? Because we are going, 60, 80% of people want a hybrid workplace. But how do I ensure that we get back to work, form those relationships where most of the problem solving, most of the, again, I come back to friction reduction, like to getting things done inside of a company. If you know the right people, you can get things done. And the way you know the right people is just walking around the halls and talking to people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not happened. That we've had a year when that really hasn't happened as much. So.
Gosh. That's so true, Pouli. So true. So many insights. And again, that leads me perfectly on to, question 3. But as somebody who's worked in multiple organizations, as somebody who works with multiple organizations as well, you've got both ends of the spectrum here. But in terms of, the most important people involved with this, and, every business article at the moment is focusing on key decisions that leaders are making. And as somebody who's been led and as somebody who is led as well, what would you say, Pouli, and I'm going to put you on the spot and just ask you for 2, what would you say that your 2 traits that are absolutely essential for a world-class leader to display?
Great. I mean, it's a great question. And, lots of books have been written about all of, those types of topics. I think, at least in terms of this moment in history going forward, the 2 things that I think come to mind, one is listening skills, just genuine interest in the other person. I think sometimes business leaders lose their way when they don't listen closely enough to what other people are saying, when they actually hear what is going on inside of another person. It's basically, listening is a shortcut to empathy. And I think that's an important, that whole piece is important. Like, what have people just gone through? What are we asking them to go through now going forward? How do I understand how they feel about it? And how do I then take that into account when I make decisions? Because at the end of the day, most people just want to be heard, right? When they have an idea, when they have a way of wanting to go forward, they want to know that the leaders around them have listened and taken it into account. Even if they decide to do something different, they just want to know that they had some input and that they were listened to. And the second thing, I think, is that I think leaders are exhausted from this past year for obvious reasons. I think everyone's exhausted, but I think leaders especially, because I think everyone was looking to them to make all the decisions. And so I think to be better leaders that can manage more effectively, I think leaders have to adopt a coaching mindset. And coaching is not training. A lot of people think when you coach someone, you're training them how to do their job. For me, coaching means asking the right kinds of questions and giving the coachee, the person being coached, giving them sort of guidance on how to create their own solutions to problems. So if I'm coaching you, Sanj, I don't have to solve your problem. I just have to help you walk through that process verbally with a conversation so that you own the solution. And therefore, if you own the solution and you've created it, you're way more likely to follow through on it and feel like it's your mission to go forward with it. And then, have some accountability built into it going forward. But coaching it was a hot topic before COVID. I think in terms of saving people's sort of mental health, it's got to be an important part of a leader's toolbox going forward. So listening closely, which is a big part of coaching, and then coaching people, not just managing and directing people, because you can't do it all, and you have to rely on the fact that the people you work with have creativity and they have solutions. You just have to help draw it out of them.
I love that. Especially when you think about the amount of, and it's just the way that, hierarchy is built, but the amount of people who get promoted or get positions of responsibility for others without having any experience or training in how to do so. So this element of, Pouli being excellent at his job, therefore he gets promotion. Now Pouli's responsible for 3 or 4 people.
Right.
And I know, we've had conversations about this before, but now Pouli's responsible for 3 or 4 people. But Pouli was just excellent at his job. Right. Now he's got to, manage these people. And then Pouli's head is thinking, well, if I manage them really well, what happens if they get promoted? Do they get promoted ahead of me? What if I want to be the main man? Then how do I, manage them properly? Do I delegate? Do I be the traditional boss? Do I be a nice boss? All these kinds of questions just come up. And again, I think what you've said about coaching as a concept, especially because you can't have those conversations really, especially because of COVID and because of virtual working, you and I, had we met in person and bonded in person, we would have bonded on a walk to a coffee shop. We would have bonded whilst waiting for the washroom. There could be a big queue. We would have waited at reception when we picked up the wrong item for each other, or whatever these items might be.
Yeah.
These things would be, that kind of thing. That's where we would have bonded.
Sure.
Whereas on virtual, you don't have that because people log on to a call, they log off a call, and those, pure moments of bond, let's just give them a name right now, fall away.
Listen, Sanj, the world of work, the corporate landscape, we think about it so serious and it's so, it's so important, right? It's no different than the relationships. Like you said, I know people that I know a husband and wife. One of my dearest friends in the world met his wife while sitting in traffic court to fight a speeding ticket. They sat next to each other, getting ready to go in and talk to each of them had a speeding ticket of some kind.
Wow.
They will get in, and they went out for coffee or something afterwards. They started to date, and they've been married, and they have children. And like I said, they're my closest friends in the world. That's the analogy for work, right? It's do I bump into Sanj at the water cooler? Do I have a cup of coffee with him? Do we joke about something we both see at work at the same time and then become friends? And oh, by the way, maybe we create some new process or system that helps the company, but it's all human connection, all of it. That's so critical. And we have to get back to it where you can see society and business kind of fraying at the edges. It's just like we've had enough of this now. And that's why people are so anxious to just get back to it.
Wow. I love that, Pouli. And again, like classic example, but that couple, had they met in the modern world, and like, for example, let's assume that, for example, I see a lot of legal proceedings, at least in Britain, I'm not sure about America, but are done virtually.
Yes,
so,
right.
If they had that, hearing about the speeding ticket, they would have just been in the waiting room. And in the waiting room on Zoom, you can't have a conversation with another person. However, Pouli, I think we could be suggesting a fantastic feature for Zoom is to enable a chat feature or a conversation
while you're
waiting
room.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? at least replicate some of the real world. But exactly, right? Think about the missed opportunities when people don't meet, when they don't run into each other. In your own life, my own life, the little things that when you turn left instead of right, sometimes things happen. So
no, I love it. Pouli. Conscious of time, but last question I want to ask you today, and I definitely feel a part 2 of Pouli coming up soon. But my question to you, last question is, bringing it back to the workplace, is what one top tip would you advise organizations to sustain well-being within teams?
Yeah. So it's related to the quote that I gave before. And this is what I share with leaders now when I speak to them at conferences or workshops about workplace well-being. If you as a leader don't embrace this concept of personal positivity, of your own happiness, of your own internal joy, if you don't embrace it, if you roll your eyes when someone says be happy at work, you will not sustain well-being with your team. It's just as simple as that. So the top tip I have is open up to the fact that you need to take care of your own personal positivity, your own personal happiness, your own well-being, doing the things that are out there, right? All the tips and all the daily habits that we all talk about, they're in our book, they're in everyone else's book. the daily journaling perhaps, or writing down 3 things of gratitude, or filming a quick video that of something that's meaningful today. Doing something where you think about a memorable event from your past. All these, there's so many things. You can Google it and find a million different ways. But the one thing to sustain well-being within a team or within a company is to sustain well-being within yourself, and truly believe that that's important, because once you start to do that, you will then bring into team meetings a different sense, a different feeling. So, whenever I sit in a team meeting, the manager, the leader will often start off with, trying to build a little rapport. They'll say, "Oh, what a great weekend it was," or "What'd you do this weekend?" or "How's everyone doing?" Those are so generic, and they don't require any level of thought. Instead, come into that meeting and say, "Hey, 15, 20 seconds each of us, tell us your favorite teacher growing up, why they were your favorite, how'd they make you feel." If you did that at the beginning of a meeting, give everyone 30 seconds to do that, the entire energy in that room will be positive. That meeting will go a lot better, probably be more creativity and a lot less friction between members. I think
I love that, Pouli, but I'm going to be a little bit devil's advocate. I think the reason that a lot of that doesn't happen is because maybe those small talk conversations are maybe disingenuous. For example, within the corporate environment especially, it's easy to go in a room of 15, 20 people and say, "Hey, everybody, how's it going? Yeah, cool, all good, right, well, bang, this is what we're here to talk about." So doing what you said, which I think is beautiful. I've never thought about that, and I'm definitely going to do that and think about it. But that requires you to care.
It does. It requires you to care. So I think that, table stakes, you've got to care about your people. If you don't care about your people, then everything that we just talked about is probably not going to change you as a leader. But here's the thing. Going forward, people have had more than a year to think about, do I like the work I do? Do I like the people I work with? I've held on to this job because I didn't want to lose my job during a pandemic. Things are opening up. The data that I'm seeing says that a quarter to a third of people are planning on leaving their current jobs when we're back to the new normal. So if you don't embrace this self-preservation, this idea of inner joy, positivity within yourself, and thinking about your own well-being, if you just get back to business, you're going to lose some of the best people in your organization. People don't leave because they don't like the company. They don't leave because they don't like the job. They leave because they don't like the manager. And that's very, very true. You often leave because you don't like the manager, hoping you'll find another manager that you like at a different company. So you have to embrace this. If not, you're going to suffer the consequences, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. Again, the emphasis on role modeling that behavior.
Yes.
And we could talk for days about work, but, I remember, classic example is, you turn up to work on day one and it's like, "Hey, Sanj, welcome, lunch is anytime between 12 and 2. Go outside, there's plenty of places to go, blah, blah, blah." But within a few days, you notice that everybody else has lunch at the desk. So then what does Sanj do within a week or 2 weeks? He's having lunch at his desk. And it's the same about laptops, it's the same about phones, the same about the way we dress, whatever it might be. So role modeling really, really matters. And it matters probably more than ever before, Pouli, for leaders to role model healthy behaviors.
Yes, that is, in a nutshell, that's it, Sanj. You have to model the right behavior for the people around you, because when you're a leader, like it or not, people want to emulate you.
Yeah.
And so whatever your style is, people are going to try to emulate you. And if your style is to highlight the positive things that you see,
exactly,
and pick those, they'll do the same. If your style is to pick people apart and find problems everywhere, they'll do that too. It's very simple. And so I love that concept of just kind of the culture you build reflects the person in charge of the culture. I mean, that's job number one.
No, I love it. Love it. Pouli, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Future of Wellbeing with Pouli. Any last comments before I stop the recording?
I'm happy that we did this, and maybe at some point we do it again. You and I, when we get going,
Hey, eventually, Pouli, I have a vision where, not just 20, 25, 30 minute, recordings, but we would do the whole, 2 hours, 3 hours, and eventually, in person. You know, we'd have a setup, we'd have a coffee, we'd have a beer, we'd have a great conversation, you know, over food, record the conversation over food, before food, you know, all those juicy bits we'd get. So, you know, this bond is going to stay for decades.
I'm sure. That's one of the few things I'm sure about the future.
Right, Pouli, I'm going to stop the recording, but thanks so much, Pouli.
See you
soon.
Thank you.
Wowie, what an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for making time to watch The Future of Wellbeing, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode with another very, very special guest. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and take care. Ciao, ciao.